Welcome to Ultimate DIY, where you learn to be your own handyman. This week we have a really cool episode. We are going to take a range hood and we are going to install crown molding at the top. Now, this video is not going to be about installing the actual range hood. It's going to be about the crown molding and what's called the chimney right here all the way up. And then we're going to build the box, because you don't just shoot crown molding into the stainless steel. You have to have a box there. You have to cut out a circle in the center, and you have to get that pipe through there so that you can vent through the attic and your roof, or so you can make an L and go ahead and vent through the backside. But either way, you're going to vent. Now, there's several ways we can do this. This is regular plywood, not necessarily cabinet grade, but it is very straight. Find your straight edge and then pull your measurements off of it, and mine go right here and here. I have another sheet of plywood under here so I can push this down, make sure that I get it nice and firm. So we are going to cut 4 pieces of this out to go all the way around. This will actually be the bottom. This will be mounted to the actual ceiling. So what we're going to do, this is our crown. This is the part that faces down. This is the part that goes on the ceiling. So what I want to do is I want to see exactly how far that needs to actually go. Push it down, make sure it's nice, and then I've got this little bit that's too far. So we're simply going to take and mark that. Just like that. And then I will measure. So we are going to go 1 inch. We're going to make it 1 1/8. So we are going to rip these like that. So when we get it up there and we go to mount this, it is going to be flush, and I'm not going to have this gap of wood showing. Be sure you're wearing safety glasses so you don't throw this stuff into your eyes, and set the depth of your saw to the depth of the material that you're cutting. All right, so let's go ahead and cut, and we are going to take our time and cut straight. Go past it, because the kerf of the round blade, you're going to look like you're okay up here, but you have more material on the bottom. All right, so now we're going to move it over and cut our other cut. And then what we're going to do is we're going to go test it and make sure that it's going to fit before we go glue everything together. All right, so here we go. There we go. So we're going to go test it real quick, make sure it works, and if everything's great, we're going to go ahead and start cutting the top pieces. All right, guys, this is exactly why you test fit. The piece is a perfect fit from outer edge to outer edge. I should have pulled the measurement from the inside, because the inside to the inside is going to be different. We are exactly 16 inside to inside. Let's see what I actually cut going from outside to outside. I believe I did 16 1/8 because of the thickness of the metal. Yeah, we're 16 1/8. So we need to take off about 1/8 of an inch to get this right. All right, guys, we have ripped it down. Let's see what it looks like now. Now that is perfect. All right, so the next step, guys, before I can put the sides on, we need to go ahead and cut the hole out. So what we're going to do is we're going to find our center point. We know that we're 16, so we are going to look for 8, which is right here. And then we are looking for 5 3/4, because it's 11 1/2 this way. So 5 3/4 right here. So let me make sure I get that in the right spot. Right here and here. So we'll double check that. We are at 8. We are at 5 3/4. So what I'm going to do is we're going to get the drill, and I'm going to use my other piece. Now, these cutters I generally use for drywall, so all I'm going to do is use it to mark it, and then we will cut it out with the jigsaw. There we go. just like that. Now we're going to line our bit right up on the middle of our X. There we go. And all right, guys, so there you go. Has my outline. So now we're just going to drill a pilot hole over here so I can start the jigsaw. So there we go. So the next thing to do is we are going to rip this down to our 1 1/8. So we're going to set the saw. Make sure that you're going by the inside of the blade so you don't cut too much away. I have 1 1/8 right there. All right, guys, so there you go. That's how much extra material I would have had that I would have had to paint or try to cover. This is it after it's done. The biggest thing on this is to make sure that you're pressed tight against the fence. You did see it pop up once in the beginning. It's a little hard without having somebody on the other side on a long piece to keep it from trying to pop up, especially when it's thin. The next step before I can glue and screw them on is to cut the pieces. Now you can miter cut these if you want, but no one's ever going to see it. So I think that's kind of a waste. But what we're going to do is plug this in, get our power, and I'm simply going to mark them 15 7/8. Make sure you're taking into account your blade of your kerf, or the kerf of the blade, I should say. One, and that is beautiful. Okay, one more time. If you're going to use that as a template, be sure you cut the actual mark off, because it will end up long if you're not using a measurement. Okay, right there. And there is that one right there. Alright, so this we're going to make R. I'm going to make this R. I'm going to do it like that. That. And that. Perfect. Make this left. And it's going to go right there. So now we're going to grab the glue and screws and put it together. All right, so before we put the trim on this, I'm going to go ahead and use this and mark the hole for the pipe. It's a little easier to use this to mark it and get it exactly straight, because this is the same size as below down here. Now, what I'm doing to make sure that we are dead center on this in the right spot is I'm using the laser, bringing it up to this corner, and it is transferring the line, so that way this line is the same as this line, and I know that's where this needs to go, and this is directly in the center. So all I've got to do is take this over, line it up, and get it right on that line, just right about right there, because I'm actually need to be over this way just a little. So we're going to bring it right there. That looks like exactly what I'm wanting. All right. There we go. And then a thing that'll make it a little bit easier is to just try to find that center mark, 8. We're going to be right about here, somewhere in that area. Check this way. That's so maybe more up here. That's what we're going to do. Now, before we drill that out, we are going to put a blanket over this to keep all the dust and stuff off of it. So there you go, guys. That quick, and it is now cut out. I know you can't really see this part too well. There we go. And these are 2.5-inch construction screws, guys, if you're wondering what I am using. Indoor rated. There we go, guys. It is now totally built. So one thing you got to check for is blocking under here to be sure you can hold your box. Of course, I've got the back that I'm going to be tying to, and there is one coming right through here, which I will be able to anchor to, but the other one is way too far away. So we're going to have to add a couple pieces of blocking. All right, so that one is in. Let's see if we need to put a second one. If I do, I want to see how close I am to the edge. Yeah, if I put another one, I'm going to be over my edge. So that one is going to have to work. All right, guys, we're going to go ahead and mount it. I'm going to use some 3-inch decking screws to go across the back. And we are going to use Loctite PL 375 to put on here to give it a little extra strength. And let's see if we can get this started. Now I have a couple of screws already kind of setting in here. We are going to take it, move it into place, and get it lined up. I have a line right here, which was my edge. So right about there. And we're going to see now if we can get this in there. And I'm going to pull it up tight, because it's going to try to probably move until I get the first one in. There we go, nice and tight. This is the bracket that actually holds the chimney, and it needs to go under here because the chimney is going to come up right even with the bottom of this. Now you're kind of starting to see why this wood is here, because that is where we're going to mount the actual crown molding, and the chimney will butt here at the very end. And if I need to, I'll do a little bit of caulk at the seam, but we'll see how well it turns out. Everything seems to be pretty square and level. There we go. And that is in. Now I got to move my cord out of the way, move this over, and line it up. All right, guys, so now at this point, we're going to seal the lower half. Now, keep in mind, when you get up into the attic, you want to seal around this, and you are going to continue your insulation in the attic and wrap it all the way to where it either goes through the roof or whether it goes out the back of the house. You don't want condensation building up. Let me get it around this really good. We're going to go ahead and put our pokey on. Not real sure where that name comes from, guys. If you're an HVAC, leave me a little note at the bottom and tell me where that comes from. All right, so we're going to go around this. All right, now guys, I'm going to let this dry a little, and then I'm going to come back and put one more coat, and then we will go ahead and wrap our insulation. So now we are ready to go ahead and put our chimney on. We are now to the part of the project where we are going to assemble the chimney, the part that actually covers the ductwork that goes either into your attic or out the back of the house. Now, you're going to have two pieces exactly like this, and it works like an accordion. They slide together. The reason that it does that is so that you can undo the screws right here on the side, drop the top piece down a little, and lift it up and out. So my big issue is I don't have a lot of room. I have the little fur down, so I really only need a 15-inch piece. Well, each piece of this is longer than 15 inches. So we are looking at almost 20 inches a piece. So that means I have to cut both pieces to make it work. So make your top piece a little bit longer than the bottom piece, so that way when this slides into the bottom one and it's all the way bottomed out, it's going to stick this much higher than the actual bottom piece. So I can grab it, pull it up, and put the screws in. Maybe it'll make more sense in a second when you see it. This is both pieces of the chimney, and they're slid inside of each other. Full disclosure, the one that's on the inside, you're going to probably have to sand that bottom real good where you cut it, or it's going to grab and it's liable to scratch up things. But at least it's going to be on the inside of this and not the outer side. So that part is not bad. I did use a little coconut oil to help it move. Now you can see here, this is the inner one. That's why we leave it longer so we can grab it. We have to get it up here and screw those in. There we go. Now we just need to work the bottom in and then clean up all the oil. So the vent hood now is complete. Everything is installed except our trim. Now this video is not necessarily about installing crown molding. That's a whole video in itself. But I am going to give you some tips on how I'm going to put this trim on. And by the way, this is not typical crown molding. This is kind of a V-shaped molding that was perfect for what we were doing here and keeping it high and tight. So there's certain things I do on this that I would not necessarily do on crown molding. Crown molding, I'll generally set my cut angle at about 31.6. This is an actual 45. And you can still cope the insides if you want to cope them if it doesn't look right. Everything else basically works the same. Nesting kind of works the same on this. There's a couple of different angles I'm going to show you when we go out to the saw basically what I did to get my cut. The first thing you can do though, if you're not real good at cutting these, is hold it up and figure out what your orientation is. So I know on this one my orientation is here, and I know I want this to angle outward. So I'm simply going to make a mark like this, and then I'm going to cut it just a little bit long so that I have a little room to work with. 11.5 from this point to the back, and I have 16.125 from this point to that point. And then the other side is a duplicate of this side. But it's easy to get turned around if you don't hold these up and make your lines and make sure your orientation is correct the way you're going to want it on the actual wall. All right. That's where you get messed up. That's why they do the nesting and try to turn it in the direction that it's actually going to be the wall. Believe me, if you've never done crown molding, you can get confused quickly. All right, so let's jump out to the saw real quick. I've already cut them, but I'm going to show you how I cut them and what you do. So let's do that. Okay, guys, let's see if I can keep from confusing you. This is the center piece, and that is the way it's going to go on the wall. You notice that's the points up that I was talking about. This goes to the wall. Thick part is going to go up,
That is your V. Now, I make marks on here. I know that this was 16 to 16. You see it's a flat line all the way across, but that's why you always measure down here, because that is your true straight line. So that is going to be that. I'm going to show you how to set the saw in just a second. This one is going to be my right side, and it's going to look like that. So they're going to join just like that right there. Okay. And this obviously is the other side, and it's going to go onto this one over here, just like so. Hold it together. All right. Now, the very first thing you're going to want to do is you're going to want to take off the fence on the back side. When you are cutting crown, it'll always be in your way, so just remove that one temporarily. And now loosen the back, because you're going to cut this direction. Now, there are multiple ways to cut crown. This is the way I generally prefer it. I'll set my 45 here, or I'll set the degree depending on what type it is that I want. Right there. The 31.6 if it is normal flat crown. All right. So I can cut that direction. So let's take a look at the first one. This is our left. This is the bottom, and I have face down on right. So it's going to look like this. If it was regular, not cut, it would look just like that, and I would cut it. Okay. Now remember, I'm going to cut it a little bit long, test it, make sure that the miter looks right, and then I will trim it to my 11.5. That way I don't waste anything or lose it. So we have that one. The next one is going to be the right side. So if I'm looking at the unit, it's on the right. Now this one, I have this going down, which is the bottom, just like that. So I would push this up against the fence and I cut. So if you notice, they are opposites of each other. So it's going to look just like that. I put these two pieces together, the tops, and they are opposites. All right. Now, this is the centerpiece. I'm simply going to take it where, just like it goes on the wall, that's the part that goes down, the part that goes to the ceiling. I'm going to take it, I will cut it, and then I'm going to flip it over, and I'm going to pull a tape from here to down here, 16 1/8, and I'm going to make my mark, and then I'm simply going to take and turn it around. Now I'm going to have the down part against the fence, and I cut. That's all you have to do, guys, and they go together. So let's go ahead and run back inside, and let's get this thing installed. All right, we're going to go ahead and install it. First of all, I'm using a DeWalt 18 gauge brad nailer. These are 2-inch nails, so they're about that long right there. 18 gauge is plenty, especially for these little pieces, and it'll be easy to putty the holes. Now, how I like to do this, everybody has their own method. I like to start on one side, get it lined up where I think it's really close. I'll pop one nail, or one brad, excuse me. One brad to hold it into place, and then I go to the front, and I'm going to get it lined up where I think it's really close. One. And then I'm going to do the same thing on the other side. And what that does is it gives me a little wiggle room to be able to move it around. If I go ahead and shoot all the nails and make one side really tight and I need to make an adjustment, now I've got a problem. I'm probably going to be recutting some trim. And if you've priced crown, you know crown is not cheap. And get it right at the edge, and we're just simply going to pop one. Did not have enough. That was not quite what was supposed to happen. Let's see if something's going on with the nails. Let me fix the nail gun. All right, guys, it is fixed now. Very weird. I must have bumped the front of it and it was knocked out of alignment. So let's get one in. There we go. All right, so now we're going to go ahead and move to the front and get one in there. So I'll get that pretty close. See, I have a little gap. I can actually use a screwdriver, push that over, and get it right where it needs to be. That's why we only use one. Well, in this case, 1 1/4, I guess. There we go. Let's see if we can get that in. That looks actually very good. Just like that. Actually, I'm going to get right into that. All right, guys, so there you go. It is totally 100% complete. Now, keep in mind,
Your box is going to be possibly different. That's why I didn't give any exact measurements on the box, because you would build it to my specs with my trim and my vent hood, and it's not going to be the same, or range hood, I should say. It's probably not going to be the same. So you're going to have to address that with, the size of your range hood and the size of your trim. If you are using a full-blown crown that's 4.5, to 6 inches wide, you're going to need to change that box a lot. You're going to make it quite a bit larger to make sure that you can get those with the nails. Now, I did not have to really do much on the edges of those. They butted up just totally fine because this is an L-shaped type of trim. It worked fine that way, but most of the time I would end up coping those as well. So keep that in mind. You're probably going to need to cope the ends. But overall, everything turned out great. I'm very happy, very pleased with it. So if you're not a subscriber, please, get that little subscribe button. Ring that little bell notification. Matter of fact, ring it twice so that it will notify you of all of my upcoming videos as I release them. Be sure you check the description for free PDFs. I give a lot of PDFs on things like this to make it a little bit easier for you, something you can read while you're doing your own project. And we will see you guys on the next one.